hosted by us, Lifestyle and Design Cluster. This is the second of our 4 educational sessions that we'll host over the next 2 years. And today we'll spend the next couple of hours together looking at industry standards of the global supply chain. We'll look at what are the generic events in a global supply chain, what are relevant data points, and who has the responsibility to collect and report the data. And most importantly, how do we move from data to information to value creation? And I think we'll start by running through the program. First point is the welcome from us, which we are in the midst of. And I want to take a moment to remind all of you that we're recording this presentation. In a few moments, we'll move on to DLOG. And we're so fortunate to have CXO and co-founder Rikke Biel with us today. And DLOG supports product data. And we want to know, what do they think about data carriers in the product? After that, we will move to Günther Brockel from CBS, who will talk about global standards and data collection. And then after that, we will move on to Resale and how Resale is working with data and how data can support Resale. And we're super excited to have Resale Honcho Chief founder of Reshopper Nikolaj Denmark with us to give that presentation. And then afterwards, we'll have a group discussion where we talk about what data points are relevant and who's responsible for collecting them. And we'll break out in small groups at that point. And then 11:45, we'll recap the conversation and talk about the conversation starters that we would like you to dive into for our next meeting. And then at 12 o'clock, we're done with the program for today. So since data, the handling of data, the contextualization of data and turning it into information is key for today's educational day. Who better to kick off the ball than you, Rikke Biel, who's founder and CXO of PLM platform DLOG. So welcome, Rikke. Kindly start by presenting yourself and presenting DLOG, and then move into your presentation.
Yes, sure. Yeah, and I can, Heidi, I can share it if needed. So I was just
okay. I have it ready, so no problem.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, I'm Rikke, and I'm the founder of DLOG. And sorry if I look a little tired in my face. I had a little flu going on here, but I'll do my best to make a presentation. Well, just for the background of why I started DLOG, I used to work as a buyer and sourcer in the fashion industry, and got really fed up with being spending my time mostly on sending data between the designer and the supplier, and that it didn't really bring any value to the chain already back then. And I can say that it's almost 20 years since I were there. We already back then talked about CSR, and CSR was something that we didn't have the time to because it was not prioritized from management. And that's actually what I wanted to do with DLOG, was to eliminate the administration for us as product developers to be able to create value. So that aligns a lot with the ESG agenda. And maybe I was just a little early in that, but yeah. So that's where we are today, and we have our head office in Copenhagen. But we were global from day one because it was a collaboration platform we started back then. In 2012, we launched. So we have users all around the world. I think it's more than 70 countries. Our customers are the brands, and they are based mostly in Northern Europe, but also, around the world. So Heidi asked me if I could give my perspective on where I see the situation, and especially in relation to how can PLM help out with the data collection. So I'll just briefly go through how we see it from our perspective, and also, of course, from our customers' perspective. Where we see right now that our customers are struggling the most is actually just to figure out how is their supply chain. Who do we use as manufacturers? you would expect that to be easy to answer, but it's not, because you have a lot of subcontractors and agencies and so on. And to start map out all of these different tiers in the supply chain, but also having the scope certificates and handling all the transactions. And that's the tricky part, because it's quite easy to have this one-to-one relation on a facility saying this is our agreement. The tricky part is to kind of document each transaction you have and validate that. And I think that's also why this topic today is so important. How do we manage that? Because that's a big question. Yeah. Let me just move on to the next slide. Yeah. So how do we see PLM in this tech stack? We call it best of breed because we believe in connecting different tools that are good at what they do. And in this drawing, the PLM is, of course, the center of the universe. But actually, we do see PLM being quite a central role in making this work. And I can also say from our perspective, what we see in the dialogues we have right now with the industry, that back when we started the log 10 years ago, 12 years ago, it was more focused on how can we ease the process of product development. But now the need of data, not only for handling the product development, but also to be able to serve the stakeholders, your big key accounts, it becomes a must-have and not a nice-to-have. So where we see PLM is actually where you can collect all of the data of your products and make the bill of material, and then connect it to other tools where you can have, for instance, the carbon emission calculation, the blockchain that will validate all of this, and at some point also some digital product paths where you can visualize all of this information towards the consumer. Then we see ERP, and I know it's a lot of lingo here with 3 letters, but PLM stands for Product Lifecycle Management. ERP is the tool, the platform where you have your sales orders and your purchase orders, and we see that as a transactional platform to handle this. So you don't need to have all of the product information in an ERP to be able to handle this. Therefore, we also see it as a critical thing that you have a tool that can help you serve these soft information towards players like Zalando and Boost and so on, but also to collect the data for your reporting to the public authorities. So yeah, this is a visual we use often in our dialogue with customers to kind of grasp what is it, where to start, because it can be quite overwhelming with all the tools out there and where to start and what to do. And then you end up being paralyzed because it's simply too overwhelming. So that's what, at least from our side, we aim to kind of help our customers to make the right decisions in the right order. Yeah, next. So where do we see, where can you start already today? I think it's quite important, and also we as a platform can help our customers kind of translating all of this legislation that can be quite overwhelming into actual operational tasks, because we have this data request from the market and from legislation that is pushed towards the brand and then pushed to the supply chain. And we from the log see we have a big concern for the suppliers. How will they manage this? We are very afraid that all of the brands will have too many different requests, and then as you also mentioned in the intro, Frederik, that we will end up just having data and not any value creation. So how can we ease this and not just add administration that will not change anything for the future? And then I have tried to visualize, again, connecting it to the tools where I see they come into play in terms of collecting the data and then distributing the data to the market. And if we take it from a brand perspective, where I would suggest you start already now collecting data is in, we call it item list, but it's actually a bill of material. We are back to the situation as we had when we did the CMT production. You have to do really detailed item lists, and especially in terms of packaging information, because that's already the first part of this extended producer responsibility, to be able to report on how much plastic and paper and so on did you import together with the product. But soon it will also be on the specific product with the waste directive coming in place. Then care instructions. First of all, Zalando's and all the big players, they ask for this data and they ask for it in 21 languages. So make that smart. But also for the digital product pass in the future, and also for being able to calculate the carbon emission. And then where most of our customers are struggling right now is to start to collect all the supplier facility information, and then of course start to collect the documentation. Yeah, I hope it makes sense. Yeah, so this is just an overview because and I think that's actually one of the biggest challenges right now in this topic is that we have too many different standards and icons, and as a consumer it's difficult to know what's actually good and bad. So in that matter, I'm really happy with the plans for having something more standardized in the digital product pass. But for now, there are some company certifications. I'm pretty sure you know all of these that needs to come into play according to the regulation. And then, of course, the product certifications and the technical standards. And in the log, we have a compliance module to handle this and follow up on this. And this is something where we, in our roadmap, has a focus. We have a focus on how can we ease this, especially from the supplier perspective, so they can easily inform you with what you need. Yeah. And there's a QR code if you want to go into details of this. My colleague Anya has been so kind to make a nice overview. So yeah. Then Heidi asked me to come up with a case. So just again to make it really practical. And unfortunately, I didn't get the approval to tell about who this customer is. So it will be, yeah, just as an example. But I think what all of you as companies already now feel is that it's correct that for smaller companies, the legislation is not coming in play next year. But I think indirectly, if you're working with big players, you will have this request no matter what. So a lot of this data is, of course, to serve your key accounts, and also with the risk that if you don't do it, you will end up not being able to send your products out, and that's a big risk, of course, but also something from a product development perspective that I see as a positive thing, because now management will wake up and start to prioritize resources for this, because else they will have problems reaching their turnover targets. So a lot of data is collected to serve the customers. And I think, again, to make it practical, that would be the approach, simply to map out and say, what do they request? And then you can kind of go back and say, then what do we need to start collecting? And especially with focus on the different components with polybags and cardboards and so on, it's important that you collect what the weight is, the volume, and so on, and then you can combine it with your purchase orders to accumulate what is then actually what you imported. I foresee that soon we will have taxes on this, just like as we have for importing stuff, where you kind of sit and look at the HS code to see which one can I lower. Then we will also have finance to look into this and see how can we change and improve this to kind of reduce the cost. Because at the end of the day, the point with this is for the brands to take responsibility in all the waste that they create. So yeah, and that of course we need to improve, and money often is the key to make these changes. So yeah, and yeah, I think right now we are at a stage about like we struggle a lot to get this information. It's quite time consuming, but also the systems are not put into play, as I showed in the tech stack overview on how to make this easy. It should not be someone in customer service sitting filling in these Excel sheets. That's simply not value creating. So we need to have systems in play that can make this digitally smart without someone needing to do this. With AI and so on, it is technically possible, but we need to make the investments as well in the industry to do this. Yeah. I think that was it for this slide.
And Rege, thank you so much for kind of bringing a little context into what Günther in a minute will bring a little more theory in play around. So this is educational track number 2 out of these 4 sessions that we're going to have together, right? And one of the things that we talked about in the first session was that we wanted brands to start considering that in the near future, we would really like to be able to identify one single product. And of course, this is relevant because our whole research project evolves around how can we support, how can we scale the resale market. So if we're able to identify one product, multiple players along the supply chain will benefit from this, not only the user, but other actors as well. And now we've seen that you have that platform with that data that in a minute Reshopper is going to present, right? And this data would be amazing, at least some of it, for Nikolai to connect with the resale process.
Yeah.
But then we need something in the products. And you guys are, I know you're sitting with a great nerdy team around you. What are you guys talking about when you're saying, oh, this is going to be interesting? I wonder what the brands that we collaborate with, what are they going to do? How are they going to build in this data carrier, this Internet of Things device? What are you guys having a conversation about?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think first of all, from a data perspective, we call it SKU. That's a stock keeping unit, and I think we need a 4th layer, so to say, as a digital twin. So a unique identifier that you can kind of link this to, and that would be created when you create the purchase order. So you simply accumulate how many did you buy of this, and then each of them will have an ID. So I think that's a first thing to take into consideration, how to create that, because then you can start connecting all these devices to an ID. We have a lot of customers talking about this, not so many yet implementing it. And again, it's a cost perspective. And I also think, as I see it, and now I'm being really honest, but a lot of them are also a little waiting for others to do it first. So they don't want to spend the most expensive learning money on this. But we have, for instance, players like Trimco who are very much aware of this, and where it's a natural thing for them because they deliver already today care labels and so on. So it's an easy choice where they create this kind of physical part of it. But it's still, I would say a lot of our customers are more thinking about how can we put a QR code into the care label rather than a physical technical thing. But hopefully with the education and also with the cost of these digital things, it can decrease also the cost of it, because right now we are in a situation where a lot of our customers and the industry in general, they have too many products in the stock, too little sales. So right now we are in a very short-term survival mode, and that's not the best combination for kind of preparing for the future. But I also see us from the log and you as an innovator on this, that we should also kind of push this forward and also come up with a solution where it's actually doable and possible to implement it without the huge investments. So yeah.
Amazing. I both hear invitation for pilot projects and test initiatives, but I absolutely love your mindset as well of being that that you're in a landscape of technologies. So where you're gonna let go of the product, the next data carrier will take over, and that the way that you're building it is like this puzzle that you're trying to connect the dots for the industry to really support them. So thank you so much, Rege. Any final comments? And I think you'll stay on for just a few more minutes. So if people have a reflection or interest, you can throw it in the chat. Any other final remarks, Rege, before we move on?
No, only an invitation for dialogue. We are happy to share our knowledge. So even if you're not using the log or do not want the log, we have a lot of best practice. We have a team of industry experts. Yeah, we are very open for dialogues and conversations on all the challenges, because I believe that this is not something we can solve individually. It's too big of a task. I see this as GDPR times 10,000 maybe. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
So whatever we can do to serve this greater manner, then we're open for that. I will join for 20 minutes or so more. So yeah, feel free to write in the chat and I will answer. And also, I think you will share the slides, right?
Yes, we'll share the slides.
Because there's a link to my my LinkedIn profile. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ray. So I think now that you've set the scene for how we should collect and use data in the supply chain, we'll use that as a segue to dive into the theory of global supply chain and data, and you will enlighten us into that, Günther Pogel, who is associate professor at CBS at the Department of Digitalization. Günther, please take it away, enlighten us.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning. I will share my slides. Just a second, then we can get started. Oh, damn it. No, it's the typical problem that we have. Just a second.
That's okay.
You see, I'm from a digitalization chair and we have technical problems always. So
you have to make sure
I think
that
you see it now in a second. You see it now, guys?
It's coming. It's coming. Yes.
Okay, it's coming. Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, great. So, and also you might hear it. I have a similar issue as Rike has. Flu is coming up, so, but I try my best.
We can hear you loud and clear, so it's good.
Okay, so but I'm looking a bit pale on the screen, so that scares me. But anyway, so I really loved and enjoyed the presentation that we had before from Rike, because it illustrated all these things that I try to touch a little bit very, very well. So there are many things there that are going on in the industry, especially in the fashion industry, and I try to sort it out a little bit. So I think that's my job now, to do the next 30-40 minutes to sort the things a little bit out and to put a bit the emphasis on how I see it, a bit from a theoretical view, but I will not do any theories, so no worries on that. So it's more frameworks maybe, and challenges that we see here. So what it is all about is basically that one here. I mean, we are here in the November seminar, and that's about supply chain management, and it's about industry standards, it's about standards and things like that. And they try to make a small agenda for my 30 minutes to sort it in, to understand what we are talking about today. And I mean, it's about supply chain management, and it is also about after sales. So, and that's not necessarily the same thing, because after sales is often not in the supply chain. So it is something which is something we need to explore. And of course, we speak about the implications on the fashion industry. A lot of other industries have the same problems. I will touch that very, very briefly today only. But the red thread, and that was what also Frederick said in the beginning, and I love that this was one of the messages that came from the workshop. It is data versus information versus value. So, and that's something that I think is very important. To have data is not having value. It is just data. And then we need to put it into some context to get information. And then this information needs to be used to create a business model, to create value. And that's something that we need to think about, maybe also in the next sessions a bit more, but we should not forget that. And of course, here in this lesson today, we have a kind of a focus on standards. And also one of the notions there was, which you cannot see on my slide because too small, but there is written the term industry standard. And you have seen Rike said already something about, there are so many standards around. And I remember the workshop and standards, and I got the feedback from Heidi that Günther said so often that he doesn't like standards. Yeah, I said that, and I mean, that's true. I do not like them too much, but that has a reason, because I do not like them too much because we cannot avoid them. And when you do supply chain management, you're always confronted with standards and things like that, because they are so necessary. Yeah, so that's the point, right? And I found this picture here on the internet, and you might know that better because you're Danish. That's I learned that this is from the airport of Aalborg. I've never been there, so I don't know if it's true. But you know, this is telling the story about the standards for me as well, because I mean, you need them. So there is a reason that they are saying no kisses above 3 minutes. But it is also restricting us, or it is also, you know, puzzling us. I mean, you know, I'm 30 years married. I don't need 3 minutes to say goodbye, but it gives me a new benchmark, and now it scares me that other people take 3 minutes to say goodbye. So, so you see the point. Standards are necessary. So otherwise, things do not work any longer, and we need that, and we need to communicate, and we need to work together. And Rikke said that we need to collaborate. So, and collaboration is based on common understanding. So we need standards, but on the other side, they also give us a restriction, or you could say opportunity. I mean, if for new fields, for new exploration of new fields, it's a lot of opportunity that we can, yeah, we can brand it. We can create the standards. So that's it. So now it gets a bit more basic now, because I mean, the job here is also about speaking about entry points of data and how do we collect data and things like that. And I do the same here as I did in the workshop. I start very basic. And you see here I have a very basic process. Actually, it's a transportation process, and just to get the things illustrated.
Sorry.
And in this process, you see there is a lot of steps that we have to take. So we start with sending something, then we put it into a truck, we bring it to a depot, then we do another depot, then we bring it to a transshipment point, then we bring it to the receiver's depot, and then finally we bring it to the customer. So this is, let's say, our supply chain in a very nutshell. Yeah, so this is a process. And here already you see something that we need to talk about. It is, what is the standard process that we have here when we are going to collect information? Yeah, so that's the standard supply.
Remember to change your slides.
Oh, it didn't change. Oh, sorry. Why is that happening? Oh, sorry. Yeah, now it's working now?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, thanks for saying that. Yes, I'm on the wrong screen, I guess. So yeah, okay. So but the same said, I think now when you see it, it's even better to understand. So you see this chain, and what we try here with the information is to try, or with the data, actually, I should have written data here to be more precise. It is we try to create a kind of a chain of custody, so that we see what happens from step to step to get control over that. So, and that means we need to collect information. So each of these steps is something which is a kind of an entry point where we need to collect the information. The point is, what kind of information do we need to collect there? So it is, for example, about the object that is flowing. Yeah, so we need to identify the object that is flowing and see, okay, now it has a status change. It was sent, status change, now it is in the depot. Status change, it's now in the hub. Status change, it's now at the receiver's depot and things like that. In the supply chain, it could be it's produced, it is sold, it is brought back, and whatever. So these are the entry points in a very, as I say, nutshell about where to collect the data. So that's the question. And then, I mean, here we are already in an issue of standardization, because how do we then, when we have, for example, different actors, there could be a subcontractor that is picking it up, there could be another short haul, long haul service provider that is doing the long distance, there might be different actors. How do they communicate with each other? So we need to talk the same common language. And that's already a first thing to speak about. How do we identify these things and speak a common language? And I just made this very simple example here. You might remember it from the workshop as well. My name, right? So, I mean, that's my name, how you know me today here in the lecture. That's my name, how it is written in my German passport. That's my name, how it would be precisely in my written passport, because I have 2 doctors. That's the name that I have in typically when I speak with Danish people, they write this one for me. So you see, there is differences. I mean, it's the same person. Or this one here. So this is Lufthansa. When they speak about me, this is Lufthansa. But when I fly to US, then I look like that here as the identifier. So you see, what is the standard? So that makes these things very, very difficult when you have a lot of different actors involved, a lot of different nations involved, a lot of different industries involved. So you need to have something common. And that's why we often need this boring number. So that is then what is typically what I get, a 6-digit code for my flight connected to my name. So that's about standards. Yeah, and Rika talked about that a lot. We have these standards, and for example, we need to have a standard for identifying the products. So that's the basis for all this product life cycle management and things like that. We need to capture it based on some technical standards. Come to that in a second. We need to share and communicate that. So you see, this is full of standards that all are needed, but they also make our life difficult. And you know, when there are two standards, then it starts getting tricky. So I have an iPad and I have a Samsung phone. I always have problems to send my data from one to the other. So already there, it's going to start getting difficult. Yeah, and you see, it is also here on a lot of, oops, that was too fast, on a lot of different levels. When you just go for what do we identify in a transportation chain? Is it the item? Is it the pallet? Is it the container? Is it the vehicle? Each of them has a number. Each of them needs an identifier, and each of these things need to be standardized. And around the globe, we might have different ones. So the Asians have been in the past very different to the US ones, and the European had a different style as well. So we try to consolidate these things, but that's a lot of these standards things. So summarizing that very quickly, so when we speak about the items that flow in our supply chain, and we want to identify what happens to them, we need to have an identifier. So we need to identify these things. And also that was briefly already touched by Rika, so I go very quickly on that as well. So there might be a lot of different technologies, and some of them are more suitable to the fashion industry, some are less. You talked about that. I think this would fill a full webinar or even a full lecture or whatever. So just briefly, I mean, the classic thing, that's the one that you have here on the top left, that's the barcode, right? So you have a simple barcode, but what is that, the barcode? It's just this number that you have. Yes, it's just this identifier. So that would be Günter Brocklin bars, just as a barcode. Or you can make it, of course, a little bit more advanced, and that's the one on the bottom of the side, of the left side. So you make this QR code where you can store a little bit more information than just the 16 digits that you have in the barcode. You can also have it with different technologies to read. So, I mean, barcodes are optical reading. You can also have electronic reading. That makes the things a bit easier when it's hidden, and you can read a bulk. So that means you can read a lot at the same time and things like that. I think you are familiar with these things. So that would be then RFID and smart labels on the top that we use a lot in logistics just to stick there, or the one in the middle, that's the one. I mean, it's a computer chip, and in this computer chip is storing a number, that's all. And all these wirings around that makes it so large, that's not the thing, that's the antenna. And so it is a tiny little chip that we put there somewhere there, and it is read by radio waves. That's the technology, while the barcode is read by optical, so by light. And there might be other technologies. I'm not speaking about the active sensors. That would be a different story. These tags and these labels here, they are typically passive. So that means we read them, and now coming back to my nutshell, we read them along the supply chain at each of the steps that we need to define, of course. And you see, here is a standardization. We need to say, okay, here is a step, here's a step, here's a step where we have some kind of transaction. And at each of these steps, we read these things to identify, okay, what comes? And then we also need to couple it to, okay, what are we now? So we are now the location at the depot. So we need to put these things together and make a kind of a record that we then store somewhere. Yeah, and that's this life cycle thing that Rika mentioned. So it is something here, this one here, where we have a kind of a central repository where we put these things together. So each event that comes in, so that's each entry point of data comes in, connects to the location or to something else, and then it is stored in the middle. Yeah, so that is our record that we extend and extend and extend. We would put that probably into a blockchain then. Yeah, and have a kind of chain of custody where we document these things step by step by step. That's how it is going to work. And this part in the middle, this is also then the access point for further services, where we then connect to the other systems of the individual provider of the services, or the owner of these products, or whatever, or an authority, or the customers is going to link to that. So that's an access point to these things. The data is not necessarily stored in this record. It is stored somewhere else often, and it is just connecting this thing. You see it maybe a bit better here. That's maybe then for the textile industry. So you see there is harvesting, there is weaving, there is dyeing, and then also transportation, things like that. And that's a lot of things that might happen in a supply chain. And you see, we need to define our kind of supply chain for getting the entry points. And then we connect assets, identifiers to location identifiers, maybe to party identifiers, maybe to transaction identifiers, and store that somewhere in a central record. When I say central, that also might include, of course, something which is a blockchain, which is then by nature kind of decentralized ledger, but it's a centralized approach of storing this data somewhere. Yeah, so that's what I try to show here. So that's more the technical side on that. So that's the data that we have here, right? So we speak so far about data and numbers and standards. And you see, you need standards, otherwise this thing is not going to work. Yeah, so we need to connect a standard for the assets. We need to connect a standard for the objects. We need to connect a standard for the location. And all these things have numbers. I mean, most of you are Danish. You know that you have all these numbers. Yeah, you have your citizen number, and all these things are there. Yeah, so that gives us a lot of data. So that's my first point: data and how we collect it. Now let's come to the next one. And I mean, also Rikke said it quite nicely, and probably triggered it also with the title for today's lecture. I mean, we speak here a lot about digital twins and things like that. But the question is, how much are they really twins? And how much do we need them to be twins? So that is, I mean, what data do we really need? What data do we have? And things like that. So that's something where we need to put a bit more brain in. To understand things. So far it is only data, but we want to have information. So for example, when we have our chain of custody, when we do this lot of different entry points, I mean, how many of them are we taking? How many of them do we need to take? I mean, we just go from status to status. So that is snapshots. So that is snapshots that we are taking. And the question is, do they show the full picture? I mean, just very briefly, I mean, it shows us where has it been? Yeah, and where has it been after certain time slots and things like that. But does it show, for example, where has it not been? Or can we document where it should have not been in between? So we just know it has left maybe the depot and it has now arrived at the hub. But what has happened in between, we do not really see that maybe. But maybe for a compliance thing, we might need to see that. When we think later on about after sales, there might be something else in between that we do not see between the snapshots. So that is what I also try to show here a little bit. I mean, how much do we really have a twin that is showing the real life? Or how much is it just, you know, a shadow that is a bit delayed maybe, even in the information? And also, I mean, the question is, does the delay of information matter or does it not matter? Do we really need it real time? Or is it just a documentation thing and so on? So that also might make a difference. And that leads us to the point, how does it get information? And the information comes from the purpose. Yeah, so I mean, all this data that we collect, we need to collect it for a certain purpose to make it information. And these purposes can be very, very different. And there is often also a misunderstanding. Maybe I overemphasize that too much because I got a lot of confronted with these misunderstandings in practice. And maybe it comes more from the logistics people and that's from the fashion people, I don't know. But I mean, there's a lot of confusion about what a blockchain can do, for example. And I mean, let's start in this standard process of operations where we say, okay, there's an operational process going on and we are following step by step of this operational process and document that. So that is, we trace the product history in fulfillment and in the operations, and then we learn about where has it been, how did it travel through the operations. That's, of course, relevant information later for us in a later stage when we want to say something about compliance. I made this part here blue because this blue part here, that's what the logistics people do with this data. That's not really interesting for us when we are going for compliance. Yeah, so this is more for, you know, for controlling the flow. I mean, a trucking company wants to know, is the stuff in my depot as it should be? If not, then I take action of controlling the flow. But that's not something about compliance. That is something that needs transparent, sorry, I confused the term myself. That's visibility. That is something about what's going on. So I need to do something right now to make my operations. But that's not something about rights and claims and compliance and things like that. Yeah, so different understanding. And many people think that the blockchain can deliver that. I think that's not what the blockchain is supposed to do. The blockchain is probably more about things like, oh, you didn't see my slides again, so sorry, I do it again. Here it's, for example, about such things, so that you have a claim, something like, I mean, this is my design, this is my brand, and things like that. And that happens, for example, way earlier. It's not happening in the operational flow. It's happening in something where you design the things. I call that idea to market processes. So that's a process that happens before you do the operational one, where you have to make a claim. So that means a designer, for example, or the product developer, they make a lot of things very early in the stage of a supply chain that are very relevant in the later stages. I mean, when you decide that this is a green t-shirt, you decide about what suppliers can be used. You decide about what you need to document later. You decide about what certificates you have. So there is a lot of things there. You create a claim. You say, this is my property because that's my design. So who is able to using later this thing for a resale thing and so on. So there's a lot of things that you use for legitimization. That's a different purpose. So that's a different purpose that needs different types of information. Yeah, probably based on the same data that you collect. Data that you collect with identifiers, locations, and whatever assets that you combine, but it's a different purpose. Or also this one here, this is, for example, it's the same more or less, but at a different stage. This is about conformity of documentation, so that the suppliers that I have used in my supply chain, they are fulfilling these standards that I have claimed in the design and the things like that. So that is also something about data, but for a different purpose again. It is about conformity, so that I show now to everyone that wants to know that maybe later that we did the things that we promised. Maybe no one is coming, maybe a lot of them are coming, and check that out. So that's not real time, maybe. That's maybe something to store. And all these things together show also, I mean, data is having a lot of value. I mean, something that we discussed, I think, even on the workshop was, I mean, when you know about all these sales information, when you know who has it had in his hands and who used it, how long, and things like that, that's very valuable information about, you know, what is, I mean, what is running well, what is not going so well in the practice. So that's this idea of having big data to make better decisions for the future, for making better designs and things like that. All the big brands know that. So they have a lot of forecasts, and that they get a lot of market information and things like that in to make that thing. It's another thing. Yeah, so this is about documentation and using this documentation, but it's also about transparency, showing about how well are we doing this thing. So you see, there are many, many, many different purposes of data. And I think most of the ones that we need to have here in this fashion industry with circular economy and things like that is about, yeah, about claims. It's about conformity. It's about transparency and things like that. It's less about visibility. It is more about things where we document that we are okay. It's document where has it been. It's documenting who owns that and. Yeah, so you see, there's a lot in there. And also here, Rike did a very good job, I think, in showing all these certificates that we have here. Yeah? And so that means there is someone that needs to confirm these things. So how can we say, I mean, we are conform? So how can we claim that? I mean, we can write a lot, and you might also know that there is more olive oil around the world than we have olive trees that can produce that. Yeah, so I mean, there's 80% of the olive oil is fake. So I mean, how can you document that this is proper things? So there must be certificates and things to make these things happen, but there must be also someone that is going to do these certificates and make these certifications. And just to illustrate it very quickly, I do not like to go super deep into that, but that brings a lot new stakeholders into the game. Yeah, so just two things that I try to show. I did the same on the workshop as well. But just to make this example, and this is from UNICE, but it shows a bit the problem. So I mean, how do you say that something is 100% or 50% sustainable when you have, for example, different components in your product? Yeah, so this is from the fashion industry maybe, and you might have a sustainable source and you might have a non-sustainable source. And I mean, both go into your finished product at the end. So how do you say now it is sustainable or not? What is the rule here? So what is the mechanism to say that? You need another standard, and you need another one that is giving you these standards. So for example, here there is, that's just what I wanted to illustrate here. There is something what they call mass balance, that they say, I just have the weight and say 50% of the volume is, or 100 kilo here is sustainable, 100 kilo is non-sustainable. So that means the output of 200 kilometers is 50% sustainable. So then I can make a label on that. And then you have certain rules when you can say, when is it sustainable, when it has a minimum of 80% and things like that. So you see, there is things to consider. It's about certification and stuff like that. That is necessary. So we need to have another actor that brings that in. Yeah. And just think about, later we speak about after sales. I mean, think about, I mean, cleaning the things later or repairing the things later. So you have something where you claim it is green, it is eco. But I mean, you had it out in the sales and then, I mean, it was repaired by a third party. And is it now still green or is it still sustainable? Maybe someone washed it with chemicals in between. Can you still claim that? So there is a new things that might need new actors, maybe. Who can do that? And there is all these questions. And of course, I mean, other smart people have thought about it a lot already. And there is, for example, the institutions that I have here, and I think it's not the only one. There is UNICE, so it's the United Nations, and they have big documents about such things. So they speak about traceability and transparency in the textile and leather industry. It's, I think it's each 280 pages long reports that they have published. You can download them. And they make such things. So here you have that, for example. I mean, how do you make a claim? They even have a definition of what is a claim. Yeah, and then, I mean, they have all these definitions. So it gets very technical. So I try to avoid that, but just to give you the insight. Yeah, so what is a traceable asset? What is the verification criteria? There are processes in place. There are standards in place. You see that here on the bottom. So there is, for each of these things, there is a set of data that is standardized. What does that mean? There is definition. So that's maybe also the thing why I say standards, I do not like them too much because it often gets very technical, but this must be done. Yeah, and it is very, very detailed and complex often, but it must be done. You need to find your way, what is relevant for you and things like that. And also this one here, don't be scared by the complexity of this. That's exactly what I want to show here. It is detailed. It is having a high level of detail when you try to do it for everything. Yeah, I'm not saying that you need to do it for your case or for your use case, but when you try to make such things standardized for everything as a kind of an industry standard, it gets very, very complex. So for example, the yellow one on the left side, that's without circularity, while the one with green and blue on the right side, that's with circularity. So you see here, there come a lot of processes in, and some of them go back and forth of a lot of actors. You see also these different, what is that, these pictograms of man or woman or whatever. That's different actors that play here a role. So you need to have someone that is going to certify. So that is all these labels that you know from the fashion industry. So eco tags and all these things, there are hundreds of them around. So you need to have certifiers. But how is the process of certification? How is that standardized? So that's what UNICE is doing. And that's way beyond what we are doing here in this webinar. But there is a lot of work done, and not only from them. Yeah, so that is about another stakeholder, so a kind of a standardization or a certification authority, but even a certification of the certification authority. Yeah, so there is also a standard behind that. I mean, Reke mentioned that, I think, very well. Another thing here, also very, very quickly, I mean, we are not the only industry when we speak about fashion. There are many other industries. And then we have to share data. We have to exchange data. We have to communicate. That's a lot about the collaboration standards and the communication standards, even more short, because that's also very wide. But here we get another actor involved. So, and one that is a lot pushing the things that we also do in the fashion industry. I mean, the digital product passport comes from the EU. So this is something that is legislation is demanding here. But they also think about, I mean, where should we store the things, and what means safe data storage and data exchange, and should we have it in the cloud? And the European community, they complain a lot about that. It's all Asian and American companies that are having the cloud operations. That means all this data, also your property data or your claims and your designs, they are stored maybe on American or Asian databases. And we don't want that maybe. So what they are going to try to do is they want to do a big data pool. So they are trying to standardize how you store the data, how you exchange the data. That's another category. Yeah? And creates a new set of standards for storage, but it also creates industry standards. Yeah? And I mean, you see here also, there is no fashion standard yet, but there are many other industries that are doing these things for a couple of years now. I do not know if this is just a pool of data that is at the end endless, or if it is going to a real value creation, but it's going to happen. And that means we get another authority in that might speak about data standards. We have the Catena X, which is automotive industry. Yeah, and I mean, okay, that's not fashion, but how do we separate fashion and other industries, for example, in the after sales? When we have inputs for products in the fashion industry that come as outputs from other industries, like the bottles that we recycle into fiber and things like that. So there might be also long term, not tomorrow, but there might be also cross-industry standardization things that we need to have. Just to show you that, so there is another actor, which is authorities, that we might need to take into account. And when you think about these certification processes and things like that of UNICEF, when you think about these Gaia X things on data holding and things like that, of course this affects the blockchains. Yeah. Also this thing about, I mean, how can we say that this is sustainability or a transaction that is approved, or a claim that is ready to be made? I mean, that needs a kind of confirmation process, and that's of course a lot at the center of a blockchain, so that we only write things into the blockchain that are true. Otherwise, I mean, the whole thing of having trustworthiness by the blockchain makes no sense. When we are not, when everyone can write the things into it, it makes no sense to say it's trustworthy. So we need to make sure that what gets in is trustworthy. So that is a confirmation mechanism. I think Jan said that very nicely in the first workshops and the first seminars. But let's link to that. So we need to have actors that do that. And you have seen it from the presentation of Reke. There is this certification authorities, or how you want to call them. They are very relevant, and it's relevant for them. She said this is one of the most critical parts is to get the certifications in. That's the thing. So that's about information. So you see, it is about legitimization claims and things like that. And that brings us into actors. And that brings us into new things. And that's maybe my last point that I try to make here. Now let's look a little bit forward. So, I mean, so far I spoke mostly about the existing supply chain. Yeah, so the one provenance and things like that, where we have a defined thing from raw materials to the stores. But we want to speak more about the circular economy. That's the topic here, where it goes beyond. Yeah, and I mean, there is a lot of things to do. So now we need to go towards business models. No worries, I'm not going into all of these points here. But also here is, of course, a lot going on. And I took here the freedom to do a bit benchmarking with the British ones, because they have the nicest slides, so that was easier for me to do that. But I mean, there is Positive Fashion. That's an institute of from the British economy, and also British government is involved in things like that. And they defined here 8 aspects of things that we need to do in the future when it comes to circular economy. I'm not going to all of them, but that is starting points for new business models, things that we need to do, things that we need to develop. However, all of these have a few things in common. Yeah, maybe one thing. When we speak here about circular fashion ecosystems, this nice picture here, all I want to show with that is, I mean, there is a bunch of new processes, and these processes go maybe into different directions. It creates a new ecosystem. I come to that. So we have this term ecosystem. We hear that a lot these days. Because we have not one single company anymore. And that's something that we have also seen before already. When we speak about the supply chain, it's not one single company, it's many companies on many different levels that work together. And here we might maybe get even new companies, new actors necessary. That's what I tried to show also with the UNICEF thing and with the Gaia X thing. Yeah, so there is new stakeholders that we need to identify. So the processes are maybe not so straight anymore. They are maybe not so standardized. And I mean, for me, I try to make it a bit more visible. This term entry point gets now also a second meaning. Yeah, I mean, entry point was so far only used for, I mean, it's the entry point of information into our information system, or actually the entry point of data into our information system. But now entry point also gets something. When do we get maybe our products that we have sold, so they exit our supply chain when we sell it? When do they get back to us? So what is the entry point of the physical product where we then can collect the entry of the virtual digital twin again? Yeah, so that is a challenge that we also have here. So it might be that we need to have new actors here. So for example, these British people, they put a lot of thoughts on logistic service providers, that they could do that, so that the logistic service provider are the collecting point for the physical products, and then they are naturally also kind of an entry point for data. So that means what Rikke also said, collaboration, and maybe find someone that is doing that. I think you have thought about such things and you're doing such things as well. But you see the point, right? It creates new actors, it creates an ecosystem. So that's what I have here with this thing here, the double meaning of the term entry point. And this creates even bigger ecosystems maybe in the future. And that's what I try to show you with my last slide. And yeah, it is complex, but I think it illustrates that things very nicely. So this is actually, as I said, taken from this Institute of Positive Fashion, because they have that in a wonderful way. Yeah, so this complexity that you have in all these things, it's shown there, but also what you can do here. I mean, on the right, you see these action areas that I have shown you quickly before. And now I jump a bit, because you can do the same. Oops, jump. You can go to the website, and there is interactive. Yeah, and then you see here things. Now I need to get a bit closer. So for example, developing a digital tracking system. You see here, you can go here, and then you see on the left side what stakeholders would be involved there, according to the Institute of Positive Fashion. I think we have to take that as an input and rethink these things into our business models. I think it's not one by one the same for the things we are going to do in this project that we have here. But so this is about the actors that we have here, and then on the right side, that's the action areas that are touched there. Or I mean, you could check out this one here. This is where is academia involved. I think that's not enough black points, so there should be all black. Academia is involved everywhere. But you see how it's going to work. Or you can go to the right one. What do we have here? The circular and sharing business models. So you see there is a lot of actors involved in such business models when it's coming to sharing and things like that. Or this is about demand recycled and things like that, enhanced identification and tracking. So that's more my topic here. So it's a little bit less recommendations that they have here, but you see there's a lot of actors involved. Yeah. So you can play a little bit around with that, because that illustrates a lot of things that we have collected and shown in a very nice way. And I could not do that better, I think. That's what we have. And maybe just to recap also to the workshop from the, so I close that now, just a second. Recapping to the workshop that we had a week ago, and that's my last slide. And before I hand over then to the next action that illustrates these things and probably a bit more. So that was one of the business models that the students provided us last week. Yeah, it's about resale business models. And I mean, they made a very important point. Yeah, so that's why I put the slide in. Different resale models have implications for data collection, for authenticity and reverse logistics. So there is differences, and we need to figure that out. Yeah, so that's why I'm a bit skeptical about these Gaia X things, where they try to make everything in very detailed top down. I think, but that's my personal thing. So we can discuss that and think about that. I think it should be more bottom up. Although we then create new standards. Maybe we have 14 in place and we create a 15th one. But okay, that's how it's working. Otherwise, I mean, we do something which is for me a bit more, I should not say that maybe, but that looks more like communism to make this big picture thing, and everyone is then following that. I think it's more bottom up, where you create use cases and things like that. And that's exactly the right thing, what you're going to try here, I guess, and find companies and cases that are doing that. So what I have here now, I hope that sorted a little bit the things out without creating even more complexity, but it is complex. There is standards and there is things. After me, when I see the agenda right, there is now one that shows what you could do here. So how you could use the data and create a business model and things like that. That would be the next step. So I would end here and would give it back to Frederick and is it Heidi or Fredrik? I don't know who is taking over now.
I think
But yeah, of course, I'm here for a question as well, but I think also my time is pretty much over. So thanks for today then. I will stop my sharing now. And I find the button.
Thank you so much, Günther. That was quite a helicopter ride and a lot of information. Both Heidi and I thought you landed it very well in kind of coming back to the actionables and to a tangible overview of how the dots can be connected and are connected. So now that we've heard from you with the complexity, all the players, all the questions to ask internally, and we've heard from Rikke and Deloc, who provides a service that can help instrumentalize the data collection and sort it. We're really happy to welcome a business that is very much working with data. The business is the most successful C2C resale platform for children's apparel in Denmark. And we're very happy to have the founder here with us today, and that is Nikolaj, who's sitting here. Nikolaj, please take us into the engine room of Reshopper and let us know how you go from data to information to value creation in your business, and how this can inspire the people on the call and the ones listening to it afterwards to kind of look into how they conduct their business. So first of all, thank you so much. Tell us about you and Reshopper.
Thank you. I'll do my best. Can you hear me?
We can, loud and clear.
Okay, I will share my screen. I will try to do this.
And while Nikolaj is bringing up his slides, I hope everybody is listening. It is really, now we're going to listen to Nikolaj talking about Reshopper. I really want you to think about these models that Günther showed, how complex it can be looking for data. But in the circular economy favor, we actually have the opportunity to go out and ask Reshopper to collaborate with them, and in that way narrow down what data are we looking for to provide value and actions in the supply chain, and not just collect data for the sake of data. We see your slides, Nikolaj, and we hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Nikolaj, and I work with the communication and concept development. And yeah, by the way, the slide deck is in Danish. I hope it's okay. I co-founded Reshopper in 2012 with two of my fellow students. Today, Reshopper is Denmark's largest marketplace for families, where users buy and sell secondhand items for children. And in this presentation, I'll go into how our many users generate data through their resale activities, and how both Reshopper and many of you in the audience can benefit from all the data. But first, a bit of background. We have more than 250,000 users annually, and our app has been downloaded more than 1 million times. More than 25% of our daily users log into the app more than 5 times a day. Our over 10 million transactions have occurred through the app since the start, and have provided us with a great amount of valuable data over the years. Last year, we started our journey into physical retail, and we have now 4 stores in Valby, Tostrup, Aarhus, and Kolding, as you see in the picture. Our goal is to create the future circular omni-channel concept for children's clothing and toys. For 10 years, we've been known as the second-hand app, with the vision of making life easier for families to save money and help the environment. And now Reshopper has also become an active seller on our own marketplace. That means we're reaching out to companies with unsold garments or brand manufacturers to buy their supply goods from overstock and older collections. And then we sell side by side with all the private sellers on our platform in our stores and the app. Today, Reshopper is more than just a second-hand app. Here's a quick overview of how complex our business has become. we always have a big focus on the user, ensuring we create the best possible experience, but I won't go into details here. Instead, let's take a closer look at the journey of the garments which all you manufacturers produce, and we see what happens when it lands in the aftermarket. On Reshopper, each item is assigned a unique ID when a private user or a Reshopper staff member lists it in our ecosystem. By the way, we also add items by importing from Excel files and so on. The item then appears in the app and in the physical store. User and Nana buy the item in the app, and after use, the item is already in our system with relevant data, making it easy for Nana to list it for resale. Then Sophie can purchase the item again. Now that you have some background on Reshopper, let's explore how we use data when our users sell their items in the app. We can track it down to the item, type, and brand, and so on. On the screen dump from our admin, you can see we monitor sold items for each brand. That is valuable data insights for us, especially when we buy garments from older collections. It could be from you, the manufacturers, because when we can see average price for each brand, how many sold items and the revenue and so on, it helps us. We also ensure that data helps users determine the right price for their items, as pricing is often a big barrier to resale. With our data, we can guide users with a price range, and you can click on the link as well and see examples from local sales in the neighborhood. When we have this data on individual items, we can also determine the average price for items like winter suits. This data could be relevant to inform brands of their value in the aftermarket and which styles are popular. This could help designers make informed decisions as well, and so on. We can also use the data to identify trends. For example, this year we monitored the demand for winter suits in real time, and we knew when to run sale campaigns for our own winter suits. And as you can see, the demand was a month later compared to last year. We can also inform users that if they list a winter suit for sale now, they can sell it quickly and at a good price. And recent events like Halloween can also be seen in our data. Here's an example on the searches for costumes just before and after Fastelavn in February, as you can observe in the yellow columns. So now you may have an understanding of our ecosystem, but what can we do with it? Let me highlight a few possibilities. Currently, we have a good sense of what sells, which brands are popular, and what types of items are in demand. But what if we knew exactly which styles that sell again and again? What if we could see images and descriptions of wear and damage on specific models? This would allow us to monitor designs in the aftermarket and improve future collections in terms of material selection and design together with the manufacturers. Therefore, collaboration in the industry could help achieve this with a standard for tracking with identifiers in the garments from the moment of creation. At Reshopper, we dream of all clothing being born into a circular system. It could be when you buy a quality sweater from brands like Wheat, Kongesløjd, Green Cotton, it would automatically appear on the Reshopper app ready for resale. Of course, first when the user is finished using the item. This will ensure that manufacturers have control over the products throughout their entire life cycle. It also means that when EU's extended producer responsibility for the textile industry comes into effect, you as a brand will be ahead of your competitors. finally, let me mention a scenario where clothing identifiers would be highly beneficial. One of the major barriers for family is the time it takes to list their items for sale. We're working on a commission-based solution where we assist users with a resale as a service. We have not launched it yet, but the plan is that users can send their clothing or drop it off at one of our stores, and they receive a bit of the sale when we sell the item. That means our staff manual will create listings, take photos, enter details about the type, condition, and brand, and more. But what if we could simply scan the clothing with identifiers that come in? It would be much easier for all parties to circulate items in the future. So that's my perspective on what we do in Reshopper. So, well, that's it for now.
Thank you so much, Nikolai.
I think a few questions that jump to mind, at least to my mind, is how you document the state of a second sale going to a third sale, like the image material. I would imagine that you would need to update that. Can you elaborate a little bit on how that process currently is and how you see it in the future?
Yeah. Can you elaborate? I didn't get it.
Like when you enter the information of your product the first time it's being resold and have image documentation of the condition it is in, I'd imagine that you need new imagery when it's being sold the next time.
Sure. So right now, if the users actually try to resell it, we don't use the original photos. Then you have to upload the condition the item is in the current state.
Do you keep stock then, or do you store kind of the states of a garment in your base so you can see the levels of wear throughout the lifetime of the product? Is that something that you do or something you're considering?
It's something we are considering, yes.
Very cool.
Can I ask one more
Yeah,
question?
go for it.
Nikolai, in your business model, we're looking a lot at like the circular business models and the viability, and it looks like you've nailed that with Reshopper. But with like your perspective on gathering all this data from brands, do you have a thought or some considerations on whether that is data set you will be selling, or do you see that as a service to just support your business? Say you had an example of wheat, of a jumpsuit from wheat. If you over 10,000 sales of wheat jumpsuits can see that this particular style busts in the crotch seam or whatever it may be. I'm a fabric geek, so I would imagine that's a reoccurring incident. Do you see a business potential in accumulating and selling data sets for brands that are highly represented on your site?
Yeah, sure. We also look into that, but right now the data is not in a state where we can actually share it with others. We have to collect it, and also we think about this business model, but we have to collaborate with some brands before we just launch it as a service. So if there are any potential corporations out there, we could join them, and then we together could find out which data is interesting for them. So it could be relevant.
Nikolai, this is a perfect invitation to both open up for the group discussions for a little bit, but also to the ones listening. You are all listening part of this educational track, which is part of this project called Trace. And for the next 6 months, Nikolai, Reshopper, and other resale platforms will be under investigation, I would almost say. But we are teaming up with these platforms to look into some of the trends and how that mechanism between data information and actually doing something, creating an action based on data is something that we are testing. So if anyone found it interesting what Nikolaj just showed and the value that they can create with this data they have, please let us know so we can team up over the next 6 months and discuss this. But Nikolaj, for now, thank you so much for sharing and giving some insights to how data carried or how data-based, how digital born your platform is and how that collaboration can bring value to the industry. And
Welcome.
Nikolaj is over and out, and then Frederik, we will put everybody else on the spotlight.
Yep, because now it's time for our group discussion. So now, we'll break up into smaller groups where we'd like you to reflect on what we've talked about and what you've learned thus far. So essentially, what is relevant data for you and for your business, and who is responsible for collecting it. And we'll break out into 3 groups, and we'll reconvene in half an hour, a little less, and check in. So
and we will automatically send you to breakout rooms. So please turn on your microphones and your video. We will stop recording. So the breakout rooms is not recorded, but please, start introducing each other, say a little bit where you're from, and then please jump into the conversation. As Frederik mentioned, what data are you looking for? Who's responsible for collecting this? And what did you find inspiring from these conversations?
But all of our speakers have highlighted the collaborative power of sharing and co-creating. So this is very much a matter of you get what you give. So please engage, please use this opportunity to ask questions, to play ball with the other people in your group. So see you in
a little bit.
Yeah. Welcome back, and we apologize if any of you other groups had a brutal cutoff. We did. Milena in our group was in the midst of the sentence when Zoom cut off, so we apologize for that and blame it on Silicon Valley or Bay Area or whomever made Zoom. They're the ones who set up the parameters.
I really hope that you had some fruitful conversations and met somebody you maybe didn't know or now know. If you have a comment or a reflection, please put it in the chat. But we're coming to an end, Frederik. This has been a really interesting morning.
Yeah, it has. And I think we want to start up with, or end up with recalling a little bit of what we did last time, if any of you were part of the last educational days. So last time we asked you to explore what opportunities digital identifiers on garments can unlock for your business, and have a conversation with your co-workers about this. And if you had these conversations, we'd really like to hear what the outcome of them were. You can put them in the chat, and then if there are conversations in the chat, we'll follow up on them. And we want to use that as a segue to how we're going to end off today. And we'd like to ask you for a new conversational starter conversation to be had internally in your organization that we'll pick up on next time. So we think you should have a conversation with your co-workers on what we've talked about today, on the opportunities that gathering data across the supply chain can unlock, and which of these parts would be interesting to you. So essentially, taking off from what both Rikke and Günther and Nikolaj has shared, and trying to bring that to life in the lunchroom or in your business, and talk about where are we now, what could we learn, do we sit on some gems that we can activate and turn into profit driving initiatives, and then we'll follow up on that conversation when we meet next time. Do you have anything to add?
Yes, I was just about to say, if you feel like you need to pick up on what this is part of, this Trace project is a project running for another year. It's been running for 1 year. And CBS, the Royal Academy of Arts, and the Alexander Institute is really curious to collaborate with organizations to test these scenarios. And I really, really appreciate that we're looking at the resale market, because Günther's presentation on supply chain can be super complex if you're trying to uncover everything. But right now we're trying to uncover how can we make products sell better and at a higher price and sell several times. How can we scale the resale market so we can create more value from one product over and over again? And within this context, for the next 6 months, we will take a deep dive into what data points will be really appreciated on the resale market. And for this, we really invite companies to join the conversation, to join a pilot or a test. So we, for the next educational session on the 4th of April, can not only show some theory, but really invite some of you guys on the stage to share what you have learned.
And most likely some of the things that will be shared is the results of the conversations that Nikolaj is having, specific conversations with some of the brands that are sold on his platform. So what we hope to achieve with both this Trace project, the main project, and the educational sessions that we're having now is very much connecting the dots, introducing the different players to each other, so we can identify where this value creation can happen and whom should meet whom and why, and what the outcome of those meetings are. So we hope we're landing this, and you're of course welcome to reach out to the researchers or to reach out to Heidi or me if you have questions or suggestions.
But we are at the end of the morning. I hear Frederik was really polite in calling it conversation starting. However, you are part of an educational track, so it is homework. But we will reach out to some of you guys and ask if you want to share your reflections the next time we meet. As mentioned, the 4th of April at 10 o'clock until 12 o'clock, and it's an open education, so you're welcome to invite a coworker to join with you or somebody in your network. But otherwise, thank you for this morning, and we see the sun has come out, so this is going to be an excellent way to start the weekend.
Thank you for now, and of course, thank you to Nikolaj, thank you to Rikke, and thank you to the researchers and the academia joining, being part of this, and thank you to all of you guys for listening, and have an excellent weekend when you get to that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.